of you introduce yourselves and the new Star Trek title you're working on?
Sure. I'm Jackson Lanzing.
And I'm Collin Kelly.
And we're writing The Last Starship.
I'm Chris Cantwell. I'm working on Star Trek Red Shirts.
I'm Tilly Bridges.
And I'm Susan Bridges.
And we are writing Star Trek Voyager Homecoming.
Nice. Okay, Tilly, and Susan, I'm going to start with you. Because I know at QCon you teased queer themes in Homecoming. Is there any more you can let our readers know about that?
I think what we can say is that where the original Voyager series leaves off, you don't see Seven for a long time. And then when we do see her again, she's gone through some changes. So we're going to sort of start moving her along that path and see what prompts her realizations.
So kind of move her towards the cards.
Yeah.
And then I kind of wanted to know about your history with the franchise and with Voyagers.
Yeah, we worked on the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game, and we were also consultants on season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy. So we've been fans of Star Trek for pretty much forever. We've seen every single Star Trek there is to see, more than one time probably. So
many times.
We can get a little insufferable about it, but we're excited though to bring the comic to new readers as well as people who have been fans for a really long time.
I think this question can be for all of you, but how do you balance new readers versus the current fandom?
Delicately.
That's the answer.
I think it's really helpful because you get notes from so many different people, and some people have a lot of history, and they'll let you know if you made a teeny little mistake in something, or like, hey, you damaged this thing, and we're like, yes, we know, it's okay, we swear.
Yeah, it's like we want to give Voyager fans what they're looking for, what they're hoping for. But we also want to just make a really great, fun sci-fi story that will maybe get people interested in the show if they've never seen it or if they don't even know what Star Trek is.
I think part of what we've learned over time on the previous Star Trek title, and now what's very much a target for The Last Starship for us, is how do you get past the point where you're playing continuity comp, right? Where somebody is expected to read this book and find how does every little thing connect to the shows. That's a version of this kind of storytelling that is that's inherent. It's always going to be there. You're always going to have that audience when you work in a big property, Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, DC, anything like that. It's going to come with these people who care more about this than you could ever imagine. Even as somebody who's seen it a million times, who loves it, who has, who's part of that fan base, you're still going to find the hardcores who make you look like you don't know what you're talking about. The trick for me is giving everybody else, right? Giving them a great story. And normally they'll forgive your continuity drops if they exist because they love the story so much. We hear that a lot about Flagship, is people coming in and being like, wow, I never would have thought that these plots would work. If you pitched me this, I wouldn't have been but as I'm reading this, I love this. I'm so glad this exists, right? And I think if you give them a great story, a lot of that will fade. A lot of the sort of continuity comp stuff will fade in the background. In The Last Starship, the sort of fun of that book has been, you don't need to know anything.
Yeah.
At all.
We really do what we like to do with Last Starship is kind of approach it and then strip out all the Star Trek, and are we still working with a real rock and roll, kick-ass space noir that anyone could get involved in, right? And then we can go add the comm badges and we can add the cool new uniforms, but that is also a privilege of us with our book that takes place 700 years after every Star Trek that you know. So we really got the opportunity to kind of carve it into a new shape that ideally people will just see and they'll be like, that looks sick. What is it?
Right.
And then we can unfold the Star Trek.
Okay, on the reverse side, because I know we can't have spoilers, but I am so excited for one particular spoiler from The Last Starship.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, that's public. We can talk about the James T. Kirk in the room.
Not that part.
Oh, not that part.
Oh, the other surprise spoiler.
Nice.
I don't think we can talk about that.
We can't talk about that yet. We can't talk about that yet. No, but it's very exciting.
Yeah, is there anything we...
For the continuity house specifically,
Yes.
right? We see you guys out there, and they're going to see this, and then they're like, holy shit, are these guys really utilizing this thing that only I remember? It's like, yes, because we are them.
Yeah, well, and I think that's one of the interesting things about, again, to talk around that idea, but I think it applies to the whole of the book. Everything in the book is designed, ideally, to be something that if you aren't a Star Trek fan, we are pitching you the coolest version of this idea. So in this context, this is a representative of something in Star Trek that is so key and core that I think it's sort of like, there's like 5 or 6 symbols in the world that you can show everybody, like the Superman symbol or, whatever. Right. Where everybody, sort of regardless of where they live, kind of knows what that is. Kirk is one of those things. It's one of the reasons why he's central to the book. But there's another thing in Star Trek that I think is almost as universal. You can go to most people and they'll know what it is. And we're like, we're going to put that in the book. But we're going to do it in such a way that requires no homework from the audience. What we want this to be is the coolest introduction to this idea, the coolest introduction to this whole framework of the world. And so that if you've only ever just heard the word before, or heard of the idea before, and then you can be like, if you even thought that sounded cool a little bit, here's this book and this particular representative and this particular idea to come in and say, yes, not only is this cool, but this is as cool as it can possibly be. But then on the flip side, if you're a fucking Star Trek fan, if you're a hardcore Star Trek fan and you come in on this idea, you're gonna be like, wait, what? Because using this is, I think, very unexpected, even to us. When we came to it, we were like, is this something we can actually do? And it's been amazing. Paramount's been so, and CBS and Star Trek and Heather and everybody's been putting this together. It's been so supportive of just putting everything in the soup in this book.
And I think that, like, if you don't like what we're doing, you might be a little square.
I'm not even sure what you'll find out.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, how do we tease this without saying anything?
Mm-hmm.
You already did it.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, how did, I want to know the kind of the pitch behind Red Shirts. To me, it's kind of like Darkest Timeline, Lower Decks.
Sure. Yeah. No, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it didn't really necessarily start with like, what about a Star Trek book where everyone dies? Like that wasn't really like the idea, but it kind of also was. Like I think that like, it's something that Heather's been wanting to do at IDW for years since she started on the license. And it's something that I arrived at, I think, separately, but then connected with her, and then we just started throwing it back and forth. But it really was, let's do the idea of a red shirt and those expendable crew members, and the fun of that, because there's some fun to it. And I think what Megan Levin does and Charlie Kirkhoff does on the art, and Jody with even the lettering, is there is a stylization to it, so you can get into the fun of that, but then earn through the story, like really caring about these people and getting to know them as human beings or aliens or this and that. And so I think by the time you're marching through this story, when you get to the later issues, you'll have been with these people and it'll start to matter more and more. So to take someone who is in effect nameless and you're seeing them vaporized on screen in the 60s, and then by the end I think we'll have some real gut punches in there. I think that'll be the magic trick of the book. Yeah.
Any like Skullsy Red Shirts elements coming?
So John wrote the most amazing metafictional book there could be about something like this, and like I don't want to spoil that book and like the brilliant thing it does. Our book squarely lives within the world, so there's no. But I will say that like where there's some similarities is that I think there are some characters in our book who are starting to become aware that they're expendable, right? And that idea, and then it's a question of what they do with that in the Star Trek universe. And I think there's some good twists and turns coming down the road.
You're right, because that is what's interesting in that book, is that awareness.
Yeah, and that the breaking of that mold is what John did so well, and I can't replicate that. So, but this is much more like, this is kind of more like if there was a Star Trek comic that was like Two-Fisted Tales or like Frontline Combat,
Yeah.
It feels like that. You said like
It's like
Star
Sergeant
Trek
Rock.
Yeah, and you were like Sergeant Rock. Like you said, like Star Trek is also military fiction, and Red Shirts is that.
I believe this very strongly. As somebody who's not a huge fan of military fiction, historically, I think Star Trek is what got me into it as a person. I look at it now and I'm like, oh, what really draws me to these sort of man on a mission stories? These, from your Band of Brothers, your Saving Private Ryans, through your Sergeant Rocks, through whatever. And I go back and it's like, your Hunt for Red October. My favorite Star Trek stuff lives in that same frame. These are people in uniform under a certain code of conduct. and a certain understanding that they all have to work together to solve aims. Except primarily the great thing about Star Trek is the military aims are not military.
Yeah, it's ideal, right?
Yes, exactly.
Exploration first.
And
all of that, yeah.
Peacekeeping armada.
And that's one of the things. Yeah, that was the thing. That's how Abrams put it. I'm not sure I ever loved that term. I think because it makes it seem like we're doing peace at the barrel of a gun.
It's a kindness bullet.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that that's sort of what we've then drawn into Last Starship too. I think Last Starship's on a similar continuity of, you were saying they're realizing they're expendable. Last Starship is, I think, very much about them realizing that they're not permanent. That the Federation, which has seemed, you jump 700, 800 years in the future and you're like, Federation will still be there. And the question of Last Starship is, will it be?
Yeah.
What is it like when that starts to fall apart? When you realize the only reason that this is eternal is because you are holding it there. And if it was glass and then it shatters and you're trying to keep all the shattered glass from falling through the fingers, how much are you going to get cut? How much are you going to bleed? How much can you lose of yourself trying to hold that glass pane together?
Especially when you're on the bottom too. Like,
Exactly.
You mentioned Lower Decks, and that's what Mike I think captured so well. And taking the title from the original Next Gen episode.
Yeah.
You're dealing with people who are on the ground floor of this stuff, and I think I'm hopeful that Academy will approach this too when the show comes out. That idea of a collective and all those parts, being greater than the whole. But there are some parts that have got to dig the ditches and do the stuff and deal with the phaser fire and all that kind of stuff, and that's definitely what's in this book. Yeah.
And then go back to the back with Tilly and Susan, but everyone can answer this. I want to know why Gene Roddenberry's vision is so important in this current moment.
I think it's all summed up way back in the original series with the IDIC, right? Infinite diversity and infinite combinations, and like these fine fellows were saying, it's about exploration, it's about compassion, it's about hope, it's about belief that we can be better people if we choose to be, and I love that so much. We need media like that so badly.
And I think people have forgotten how edgy the original Star Trek actually was, and they're like, oh, Star Trek was never this woke. Star Trek has always been extremely woke.
Yeah.
Putting a Japanese man on the bridge was a huge statement.
Next to a Russian.
And
These
they're
are
pointy ears.
right. And yes, women were still serving coffee on the bridge. Okay, but we got there in some ways, and in some ways, we've always needed to progress.
Yeah.
And Star Trek has always been about that progression.
I love that about the story too, and I think that's what's so infectious about with the way these two guys write it too. And because I came to the comics at IDW first as a fan, reading Year 5, which is you can feel it in Year 5, which these guys wrote. It's like, what if we were our best selves across the universe? When we have a hard time being our best selves across the fucking room, right? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a real nice aspirational thing that is alive. But there's a dialogue in that from the very beginning in the original series where there are people who push against that, right? So that collective, if it includes everybody, it includes dissent, and it includes people who don't agree, people who feel left out, and that's always been part of Trek too, and that's what's great. It's not uniformity, right? It's not hegemony. It's infinite diversity.
It's intelligent people trying to find a rational solution without violence, knowing that violence has to be the absolute last step. There's something so refreshing about just a bunch of smarties sitting in a room talking about a problem until they find a peaceful solution. Insane, crazy.
Confidence for.
What a feel confidence for. Yes.
But I think that's what's interesting is that it's like that doesn't sound dramatically exciting, right?
Sure.
And yet it is.
Yeah.
Wildly, the thing about Star Trek is that it works almost despite itself. That when you put this thing that doesn't feel like it should work in carpeted rooms with people in the same outfit, and they're all talking about esoteric problems, and yet somehow it is riveting drama, it's interpersonal, it's intellectually stimulating. I think Gene Roddenberry's vision, I always boil it down to, he had a phrase that he did a lot of the internal memos in Star Trek. They're all available. There's some great compendiums called These Are the Voyages where you can read all the production documents of the original Star Trek series. And I have. And one of the things that comes up a lot is this idea of looking at the unknown and seeing yourself. Right? That the premise of Star Trek is to look at the unknown and see ourselves. And I think it's something we need in the world all the time. It's maybe the greatest thing a human is capable of. Our empathy towards that which is not like us. To look at somebody else, to look at something else, to look at an animal, to look at a situation, to look at a star, to look at a machine, and see ourselves, see what we can learn about ourselves to become better, and how we can imbue personhood in that which we don't see personhood in. That kind of empathy is what drives Star Trek all the time, and it's ideally, I think it's also what drives a lot of the comics and pop culture fan base in general. We love to look at the unknown. It's what we do all the time. It's like our favorite thing to do. So why not bring everybody like that over to Star Trek, which originated fandom, and which originated these conventions, and which originated cosplay, and which originated all these things that are now something that everybody enjoys. It was like the first cinematic universe. Like, everybody should be over here. Star Trek is like one of the most welcoming, open-armed fan bases, because it is about looking to the unknown and seeing ourselves.
Yeah, I love the characters like Kirk, you actually see grow.
Oh, 100%.
Obviously, he is racist.
Yeah.
Initially, and
Yeah.
he's gonna work through that.
He's working through it his entire process.
Yeah,
Like,
like
it's not
Klingon stuff.
like once you have hate in your heart, it's really hard to just let that go. And I think that's one of the reasons that Kirk is, especially as we move into Last Starship, is going to be a big part of that. Like, how do I look at my legacy and what did that legacy actually mean? And how do I try and release some of this toxicity that I just can't get rid of?
I'll give you a little, we've been able to talk very little about Last Starship. A book, incidentally, about the last Starship of the Federation after the whole Federation explodes. I feel like I should pitch the book. I didn't pitch the book, and now I'm pitching the book. Now you know what the book's about. The cool thing about Kirk being on the ship, the reason he's there is not because he's the most recognizable character in Star Trek. That's a help, but that's not why he's there. He's there because we wanted to have a character there who was, we're 700 years in the future of Star Trek. When we meet our crew, they are the most perfect Star Trek crew you can imagine. They are, like, we have a perfectly operating machine. The Federation has become the biggest it will ever become. They are the most at the peak of their top, and then it all falls apart. And Kirk, it allows you to have a character in that story who's able to say, I remember when we all had knives to each other's throat. I know what it's like for the Klingons to be warlike. I know what it's like to push yourself to have to become that warrior that you don't want to be because it's against your ideals, right? I know what it's like to carry the hate of the Klingons killed my son in my heart, right? Is that a power in this new world? Or is that a really dangerous pilot light that at any given point could erupt into an inferno of violence, right? That question sits at the question of, like, why is Kirk here? Is Kirk here because he's a savior, or is Kirk here because he's a match? And I think that question mark, which I can't get into any more about Kirk because it's a big secret, but I think that discovering why and how that character plays out through exactly that reflection of, hey, he's not the most elevated person in the world, is a really exciting way to attack that character in such a different context.
I was wondering if anyone else wants to give a one-sentence pitch on their books.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got red shirts,
I did when I said
homecoming.
everybody died.
I think you got that.
Yeah,
Although it's
yeah.
not everybody. But yeah.
Yeah, wink, wink.
Fortunately, your title does it. Your title tells you
Yeah.
exactly what the book is.
Yeah, our book picks up the second the Voyager finale goes dark, and I like that finale so much, but after 7 years, it breaks your heart a little that you don't get to see those reunions. You wanted to see them get that for so long, and so you're gonna get that, but you're not gonna get that right away because it's Voyager and nothing ever goes to plan on Voyager. Everything goes wrong on Voyager that can. And so some things are gonna go wrong, and there's some dangling threads from the series that we're going to revisit.
Yes, there are.
Little twinkle in your eye, yeah.
I would like Neelix to be.
Didn't they leave him in the...
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have, Siskel and that wormhole, like,
So what I'm hearing is we need a Neelix standalone series.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
that here?
Please, with some recipes too, because it's like,
Ooh.
It's like a
that's
cooking. It's like a
Ooh.
cooking manga.
You know what people don't...
Yes.
You know what people don't know about Neelix is that he's immortal. So when he shows up in the Last Starship as the chef on the ship,
Yep.
it'll be perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved those Star Trek longbows back in the day.
Yeah.
I thought it was a cooking Neelix one. Bitch.
I mean, yeah.
Somewhere Heather Antos' ears just went up.
Like, no, it sounds good to me.
I love it. Let's go.
And I want to talk general Star Trek. I would like everyone to, say a favorite episode.
Sure.
DS9 in the Pale Moonlight.
Yeah, I mean.
It's when I talk about the Star Trek as military fiction, I think that's the episode that embraces that in many ways the most successfully. It's about how far you're willing to go for the cause of peace, and how much you're willing to lose of yourself. And obviously, I think that's very much on our mind when we are going into Last Starship. So that I've been revisiting that quite a bit.
Star Trek is filled with absolutely incredible episodes that really shape our cultural perspective and have really important conversations. But then there is also an episode where super rad giant space scorpions come out of fluidic space. And I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Scorpion from the Voyager episode, species
8472.
472. Thank you very much.
I got you.
I remember watching that as a kid and thinking it was the coolest thing. To that point, right? Like, finally they can look into the face of an alien and there's no connection. Like, they cannot reconcile this situation, and it ultimately, destroys so much of that species' entire universe. It's like one of the big sins of Voyager as it was traveling through and having its incredible adventures. I just thought that was so... Look, it was rad. It was also, I think, one of the first big CG effects.
It's the first CG species there.
And it just blew my little mind.
Gosh, I mean, I feel like my go-to answer for this is always Inner Light from The Next Generation, because it's incredible, right? I mean, it's the perfect sci-fi story in that, here's this probe from a long-dead civilization, and it brings, you talk about looking into the unknown and seeing yourself, they force a captain of this flagship to live an entire lifespan of their long-dead, society, and it's gorgeous, and Next Gen was one of those shows that it's famously not serialized. Obviously, there are story threads that pick up, but Picard learning that flute instrument over a lifetime, and then you see him in those moments in the rest of the show for seasons on end, and in those kind of contemplative moments or pensive moments or wistful moments with him, he might be playing that thing, and if you're just paying attention a little bit more closely and you know that episode, you know where he is emotionally and how he's carrying this entire civilization and family with him in those private moments without any dialogue, and it's just absolutely incredible.
Well, and for a man who hasn't had, whose primary sadness in his life is that he doesn't have that stuff. That he doesn't have a family, that he doesn't have a child, that his brother and his brother's son, who he was very close with, pass. That like so much of Jean-Luc's thing is not having that family, and he did, but they all existed.
Exactly.
In another
it's
world,
like his own
years
private
ago.
pocket thing, and I would say that. Or I would go the other direction and say Balance of Terror from original series, just because you talk about military fiction, it's a great movie. And it's the brinksmanship, it's that part of Kirk you're talking about, up against the actor who would play Sarek, who plays the Romulan commander, and it's incredible, and the mutual respect that those guys find with each other, even as they're about to kill each other. It feels like it's also like this beautiful, incredible metaphor for the Cuban Missile Crisis. I mean, it's just incredible. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I'll go with Next Gen Measure of a Man, which is like basically a courtroom drama, and you're like, that can't be riveting. It is riveting.
So good.
It's basically about Data, who is a positronic life form and very advanced. No one could possibly make another one like him, but they're like, is he property of Starfleet or is he a person? And it is just a wonderful exploration.
I'm also going to pick a courtroom drama. I don't know, you probably cannot see it, but I have a necklace with a star on it that says Ad Astra per Aspera. That has become my favorite episode from Strange New Worlds, because it said trans rights with its whole damn chest. And we need that so badly now. It meant the absolute world to me to see that. And the way that they used Una and the Illyrians as an allegory there, it was just brilliant. It was so good. It blew my mind. So it's a part of my heart now forever.
Yeah, we love that episode too. Just like the stuff with the passing and all that often you don't see school in media. It's amazing. And I think we're at time. I would keep talking Star Trek forever, but all great episodes.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great.
Thanks, Rob.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great.
Yes, we will.
Red buttons on all the cameras, folks.